we're connecting two screens, but rather than control dragging from button to screen, we're going to use code. And so in this first screen, we need a button to get there, so drag in a button. When we tap on this button, we'd like to go to a second screen. So type in go to second screen. And now, you don't need to repeat this step, but for demonstration purposes, I'm dragging in a UI label simply as a title. So this is our first screen. Again, you don't need to reproduce that. Now we need a second screen to go to, and screens in Xcode are called the view controller. So type that in, should be the top already. Drag in another screen, and I'm just going to copy the button and the label. And this is going to be called, this is the second screen. And this is going to be a go back button. Censor that. Nice. Now we have all of our visuals laid out, but take note of this. If we go into split workspace, and I click on the first screen, you can see the appropriate code file pops up. That is view controller. And on the left hand side here, you might notice that is this file right here, viewcontroller.swift. That is associated with this first screen we have here. Now if I click on the second, you might notice a lot of this jargon pops up, and it's not useful to us. That is because this second screen has no code associated with it whatsoever. We need to add another code file, just like viewcontroller.swift here is associated with this one. And we'll title it second view controller. The way you create these .swift files that are associated with screens, you go to File, New, File. And in here, make sure Cocoa Touch class is selected, click Next, type in second view controller, that is the title we're going to give it. Make sure it's a subclass of UI view controller, and if it's anything else, make sure to change it. Click on Next and Create. Now we have that second .swift file created. You can drag it along the sidebar and reorganize it. Now, back in main.storyboard, we need to link this file with the second screen, because right now, nothing has happened just yet. And so if we go to the inspector panel here, while selecting the second screen, so make sure to click on that, and to go to the identity inspector here, you might see something called class. If I click on the first screen, you see it's filled in with view controller, which is viewcontroller.swift. If I choose the second screen, we need to fill this in with what we just created, second view controller.swift. And now, if I go into split workspace, we have our code appropriately linked. And you might notice, if I get rid of all the comments down here, it's pretty much identical to our view controller file. In fact, really, no difference whatsoever. Now, at the moment, our code on either screen has no idea what these buttons are or that they're even there. And so we need to control drag and link them. So on the first screen, I'm going to control drag from go to second screen, which is our button. And rather than going above the functions, which is all this, we're going to go below. And I'm going to name it tap go to second. And now, rather than creating an outlet, which is if we were to go this route, we'd be able to modify the text inside. We'd be able to change how it looks. But what we want is an action, because we want to know when the user taps on this button. And so that's basically what an action is. If a user taps on this button, we can execute something. We can execute some code. Now make sure type, instead of any, it should be set to UI button, because that's what this is. It's a UI button. Click on connect, and give some space above the function and inside. Again, whatever is inside this function, or between these two curly braces I have highlighted here, that will be executed when someone taps on this button. And so what do we want to execute? Well, a transition. We'd like to go from the first screen to the second screen. Unfortunately, we have no transition just yet. We need to create one. And rather than control dragging from the button to the second screen, we're going to control drag from this icon right here. So make sure that is selected and hit down, click Control, hold down drag, and drag over to the second screen, let go, choose Show. And this transition is actually called a segue. They're the same thing, just a different terminology. Now, having selected this little transition here, make sure to click on it. In the right-hand sidebar, in the inspector panel here, there is an identifier. Basically, we need to give this transition, or segue, a name to call it by. And so I'm just going to call it transition for sake of time. You can choose a better name yourself. Make sure to copy this. We're going to paste it in the future. Now in this function here, this action we have, when we tap on that button, go to second screen, we are going to execute this transition, and we know the name of it. So we just need to use some code here, and that is by typing in perform segue. Basically perform a transition. Hit enter, let it autocomplete for you, and you see this identifier with identifier, and then we paste something in there. That is the same identifier here, and we gave it a name, transition. So copy that and just paste it where it says string. And there you go. You do need to put this in quotation marks, so make sure to do that. And the sender should be set to self, because the thing that is activating the segue, activating the transition, is the button itself. Save it, and if you go to your app, it should run. You click and go to second, and you go to the second screen. Unfortunately, when we click on the go back button, nothing happens. So we need to execute the same steps, but for the second screen. So control drag from go back to the code under all these functions, name it tap go back. Make sure it is an action. We want to make sure that we know when it is tapped. On type, it should be set to UI button. That is what it is. Choose connect. Give it some space inside the curly braces. And what do we want to do here? We want to go back. And the term for that is dismiss. So choose dismiss. And basically, we're dismissing this transition. We're going back one step, back to the first screen. Do we want an animation? Sure, why not? True. Animated is true. Completion, do we want to do anything after this transition is done? No. And the way to say nothing in code is really just nil. So now, if we run our app, we can click on go back, and it works. We can go forward and go back. We can go to the second screen and back to the first.